Alright. Submitted for your approval to the Midnight Society. Abandon all hope, all ye who went to hear. This is Lou Toad, and usually I don't do this again till New Year's, but I did the past 2 years. It's almost Halloween 2019. It's a week till rather. We're doing it. We're live. The podcast is back. This is just me, as I usually am. We're going to read from various places. We're going to discuss the lost art of the CD booklet, or the CD reissue booklet, where I learned a lot of rock and roll knowledge. And we'll be reading from some very cool paperbacks and hardbacks and paper with words on them, man. That's all libraries house, right? At the end of the day, or how as we think of them. Anyway, here's some music. This is by Diamond Head.
I've been crying, baby. I think there's no one of us was.
You gotta believe me.
right, that was Aragorn. Aragorn. They're a new wave of British heavy metal band, as they're known nowadays. We ended up listening to a couple of Diamond Head tracks and a couple of Aragorn tracks. They can both be classified as new wave of British heavy metal groups, which are basically bands that grew up with, Pink Floyd and Rush and Black Sabbath and later on Motorhead and Judas Priest, but shared the aesthetic of bands like The Clash and the Sex Pistols, in that the music had to be raw and immediate, and they were going to, make their own records and the whole independent spirit, blah, blah, blah. You'll love the internet. If you don't know what the new wave of British heavy metal is, you can research it. But for right now, I'm going to read to you a very interesting piece. Now, if you haven't seen Pirate Radio, known in its native Britain, and what I think is probably a cooler title is The Boat That Rocked. It's a movie that I watched in the theater when it came out, and when it came out, I was very, very into it. I still am into it. And one of Philip Seymour Hoffman's, the late Philip Seymour Hoffman's greatest achievements, I believe. He's basically channeling his characterization of Buster Bangs for this performance, but it's still well worth it. It's a worthwhile movie. Anyway, I did not know that he was based on a real person. He was based on an American named, Captain Roscoe or some shit like that. But anyway, he had a book that was pretty cheap on the interwebs. It's called Emperor Roscoe's DJ Book. I thought it'd be kind of interesting just to read a little bit of what he has to say. This is sight unseen, by the way. And this is a chapter 13. It's a week from Halloween, so maybe that's appropriate. This is called Styles and Forms. What does a DJ say? Remember, this is Emperor Roscoe speaking. This, perhaps, looks like one of the most obvious sections to be included in a DJ handbook, but when you really consider it, if I tell you all the answers, then you are all going to wind up sounding alike, or like me, have mercy. There are two alternatives to consider, though, which will give you something to think about. Are you serious or surface? Are you Dave the Rave or serious culture vulture? What I mean is that most of us, when we are DJing, tend to be pretty flip. We do not give out a lot of information about the records, apart from the titles and artists. However, there are those among our fraternity who believe that a disc jockey's chatter should be of a more worthwhile nature and not just surface chit-chat and wisecracks. In Radio 2, Alan Dell would, I suppose, fit this category where he uses this strictly informative method of presentation, and Jimmy Young, oddly enough, has moved from one style to another by incorporating an interrogatory approach to quite distinguished guests who come into his studio. It is surprising how he can combine the fairly serious chat of visitors, like the Chancellor of the Esquire, with the music. In this case, he is both educating and informing his audience at the same time as entertaining them, and it works very well for him as he can be seen by large audiences who tune into him every day. To sum up, what sort of chat you use between records is very dependent on what style of DJ you are. I would sound pretty silly trying to be the informative as would most Type 40 type jocks. The very type of music we play is fairly superficial and doesn't demand this type of music, just doesn't demand this type of presentation. But when you find yourself in more musically interesting areas, you will naturally have more to say. I believe this book came out in the 70s. That's a bit of a product of its time. I believe Emperor Roscoe, though, obviously, he's shot it a lot of times on the air. He's got a good point. But with that being said, we're going to return with some music from the liner notes of the music I'm about to play for you. And in the meantime, here's some more Diamond Head. And we are back. We are going to read a little bit from what I believe is a lost form of communication. CD liner notes from reissues of albums. I'm just going to pick this up. This is from Aragon Noonday, the Need Anthology, which is fucking amazing. But I'm just going to read one paragraph from it. Just out of context, just to be an asshole. In September 1981, the band went down to a core trio of Hull, Ellis, and Dunn, and the search for a suitable bassist proved to be almost like seeking the Holy Grail. Only more elusive, the likes of Lionel Murs, Tony Backhouse, and Graham Timpson came and went very quickly as Aragorn desperately tried to find the right formula. And at last, it seemed as if things had settled down by April of '82, when Nigel Starloff arrived to plug the bass gap. These fucking Brits and their names, man. Alright, speaking of the same kind of idea, reading a random paragraph from Diamond Head's reissue of Lightning to the Nations, which is a must-own. The Diamond Head story began long before Metallica were a glimmer in Lazarus Eye, in the environs of Stourbridge, a working-class town a few miles outside of Birmingham. The West Midlands was the cradle of heavy metal. Black Sabbath were born here, as were Judas Priest. Led Zeppelin singer Robert Plant was a genuine local hero. He went in King Edward School in Stourbridge. The fact that these guys had come from here was an inspiration, says Brian Taylor today. I thought if they can do it, maybe I can do it. You'd had Sabbath and Priest. With a bit of luck, we might be the next one. That's just a sample, but, liner notes, at least for me, going to Strawberries, going to record stores, and believe me, I'm not one of these guys that says, like kids today, I love Spotify, I use it every fucking day. Literally every day. But what I'm saying is that reading something in liner notes and gaining that insight, gaining a discovery about something that probably nobody else cared about but that you discovered because of this little piece of, wording in a booklet that some fucking schmuck wrote, it was very important. It was something you weren't going to find in the library, you weren't going to find it at school, you weren't even going to find it on the internet at that time. Or if you found it on the internet, it'd be like regurgitated from what you were reading. So having it was important. Continuing on along that stream, we're going to give the anarchist a cigarette, McFerrin. And if you don't know who McFerrin is, read him. Read up on him. Again, we just read at random in this fucking place, man. Being there at Grosvenor Square. Driving through the end of the night on the M1, maybe 45 minutes out of London, with the Saturday night, Sunday morning, pre-dawn starting to show up in the eastern sky, a moment of weary impatience can envelop a traveling rock band. You're almost home, near yet so far. You want nothing but your bed, but there are still the final miles to cover. It's the last place you want to run into a police roadblock. The first signs were cones and lights narrowing the southbound highway down to a single lane. Then we saw the flashing police cars, definitely a roadblock. Our immediate reaction was that this was some kind of major war on drugs operation. A flurry of checking pockets and stuffing pills and dope into hiding places ensued as we would join the line of 4 or 5 vehicles awaiting inspection. Be right back. Guys, not only is Creepshow back on Shudder, but so is Fangoria in magazine form. And I got the latest issue, which has that. A little article about Creepshow hitting Shudder. I'm going to read again, as we've been doing here, just a little passage out of context. Yes, I will probably be flying home tomorrow with fake blood under my fingernails. Helfer laughs. The actress is used to doing her own stunts. And Lydia Lane's better half requires a lot of stunt work, a lot of gore work. Benjamin Riley shows me a packet of wrinkled, blood-stained script pages and chuckles. This is what my sides look like at the end of every day. Just a little bit. Now, before we end off on music, I want to give you a little bit of teen movie hell. This is a book by Mike McPadden. Not only should you buy this and Heavy Metal Movies right fucking now, for all 3 people listening to this, if you're listening to this, please buy Teen Movie Hell and Heavy Metal Movies and follow on Instagram, Mike McPadden. Again, at random. California Dreaming, 1979. I literally picked this at random, but this happens to be one of my favorite movies. That's insane. Dennis Christopher stands as one of cinema's most peculiar attempts to mold a leading man type out of 98 pounds of mewling, squeaky-voiced Nimrodism. Even when he stands flawlessly straight, Dennis Christopher seems to embody the very essence of bad posture. Christopher's most substantial film, the acclaimed Breaking Away, casts him as a Midwestern wannabe Italian bicycle race champion. The movie's great, but it left him no closer to heartthrob status. The curious horror flick Fade to Black is Christopher's most enduring cult success. The movie is terrible, I disagree, but his Gollum-like ooziness as a cinema-obsessed serial murderer makes everything work. To date, Christopher's best and most credible performance occurs in a post-apocalyptic sci-fi jaunt, Circuitry Man, where he plays a sewer dweller named Leech who chomps and slurps phallic slugs that spew goo. Listen, you don't have to agree with everything the man says. I disagree with most of what he says, but the fact that someone dedicated this kind of love to these kind of movies is fucking great. And it's not just him. You got a bunch of female writers as well, which is very important if you're a fan of slasher movies from the 80s or sex comedies in the modern era and you're not a douchebag, essentially. It's important to have that perspective. And it's just beautiful to have that viewpoint in written form. But anyway, regardless if whether you agree or whether you disagree, books like his are important. We should continue to in this day and age, embrace physical media when it matters, and I believe physical media matters when it's a book like Teen Movie Hell. Mike McPadden, buy the book.